the last thing for the week. This assignment 3 is basically trying to set you up and give you ideas and sort of put you in a direction to do the last essay. And you can use whatever information you've already done, right, from your previous 2 things from writing L and the discussion post. You can just, if it works, you'd copy and paste it. All right, so you're answering basically 5 questions, or you're presenting 5 things. The first one is you're going to explain what your traditional narrative is, and then explain how it's changing or changed, or is, has changed or is beginning to change or whatever. And then you want to give a reason why it matters. So why it matters to investigate the change that happens. Like, what is it that we can learn by investigating the change from one to the other? So if I'm doing higher education and I'm saying that it's changing from, college is necessary for success into something else, I want to say, well, it's important to examine this change because it will show us how technology has shaped the way people learning or continues to shape the way people learn. It can also tell us what skills are more important these days as opposed to the past, things like that. So I'm trying to make a case for why talking about this matters. So that's what 1 is. Number 2 is you're just writing down the citation of your primary source, right? So you've already done that. Whether you chose column 1 or you chose column 2, you've already written that, so you can copy and paste the citation here. 3 wants you to think about your primary source and in relationship to the literature review that you just wrote. So in theory, you just wrote an essay where you talked about sources that you'd found, articles that you'd found. This wants you to think about your primary source and how it connects to those articles that you've already written about. So how does it support one? Is your primary source an example of something that one of your authors was talking about? Does it disprove one of your authors? You're just trying to figure out one of each thing. So basically you want one way that it connects with one of your author's ideas. So my primary source supports the idea that what McDermott talked about in his article here, and it also shows this, whatever. And then you also want to talk about how it complicates or does not really support or quite fit in with some other of your authors. Right, so that's the thing. Here's my primary source, and here's how it connects to and illustrates one of my guys' ideas. And then here's my primary source and how it doesn't really fit. And then it says, try to refer to concrete evidence as you develop your discussion. What this means is you use quotes from your primary source and from the articles that you wrote about in the literature review, right? So instead of just being like, yep, it supports it or it connects to it, you're trying to be like, when the primary source says this, quote, it supports the idea that McPherson said when he wrote this over here. So you're just trying to use quotes to help make your comparison more solid. Okay, and I'm probably going to create a template for this. So in theory, that process that you just went through with your primary source, thinking about it in relationship to the other sources that you have, that you've already thought about, what's interesting about that, right? It's trying to be like, so I noticed that this really supports one of the main ideas and it doesn't support another. So you're trying to come up with, basically number 4 is trying to get us to start thinking about a thesis statement, right? And they're trying to get you to develop your thesis statement from thinking about your primary source and its connection to what you've already read, right? So how does your primary source basically help direct your research, right? Like for the next essay, there's probably a better way to word this, but it's something about, for the next essay, your primary source is supposed to help guide you to what you're going to talk about in the next essay, right? So my primary source definitely shows the different ways that technology has changed the value of higher education and the process of people's learning and the places where people learn. And so that's where I'm going to head my paper. My paper is basically going to be talking about that. So they're just trying to get you to do that. Again, like I said, I might create a template here to help us. Okay, and then number 5 is about your secondary sources, right? So if you've already done the discussion by then, you can basically copy and paste that here, because what they want you to do is write an annotated bibliography for the 2 sources. And that's essentially what I've already sort of asked you to do in the discussion board. You go, here's my source, here's its summary. You can do an evaluation of whether it's, why it's credible or what limitations it might have, and then how you might use it. So that's 5. So in theory, if you've done the discussion post, you'll have a bunch of material that you can use. Just copy and paste to there. So that's assignment 3. So all day you have writing L, decide on your primary source, find one or make one, and then summarize it, connect it. Your discussion post, which is finding or using 2 secondary sources that you will eventually be able to use in your essay. You basically break them down, summarize, explain their connections to your ideas. And then assignment 3 is sort of a combination of you thinking about where your research paper is going to go and how your primary source connects to it, and how your your secondary sources connect to it. So it's like the last assignment, just to try to get you to think about, all right, here's where my next paper will be going.